And here with me now are singer Malachy J, footballer Ray Connellan, and ultra runner Conor O'Keefe, all doing their bit for Darkness into Light, all with their own mental health stories. All welcome to the programme. Great to see you, lads. Malachy, you've been here before as a wonderful performer, so it's great to have you back in a totally different capacity. Before we talk about your own stories and what you plan doing and where you're going, you're all doing something a little special for Darkness into Light and Piet and the cause, generally speaking. What are you up to?
I'll be going for a walk. I went for a walk yesterday with two of my friends up Braehead. You know, I think obviously because you can't do the huge community thing at the moment, it's good to think small. So I went for a walk yesterday with two of my friends up Braehead, and I hope to do the same tomorrow and make a donation.
Crack it on, make a donation, and that's what everyone needs to be doing. Just go for a walk and get stuck in. It's a kind of act of solidarity. Ray, what's happening in your world?
Yeah, so I'm up in Dublin now for the day, and I'd say myself and my girlfriend Lucy are going to get up nice and early and get the sleep out of our eyes, and we'll probably head for a morning swim somewhere. So we'll brave the cold water.
And again, it's that early start, keeping the dream alive and keeping it active. And with yourself, Conor, what's the plan?
Myself and Mel are my girlfriend are going to join Ray and Lucy, and we're going to go for a dip. I think it's like the best way to clear the head and just really enjoy it.
It's all the rage now for clearing it. Isn't it funny how that early morning swim has become such a thing? But I get the impression it's as much about fitness and getting up early as it is about, like, especially clearing the head.
Yeah,
people
absolutely.
Really go for it.
Absolutely. It's also creating a space for community as well. Like, you go out to the 40 foot, or you go to Vico or wherever it is, and there's just this community element there. It's kind of almost, our discussions today are going to be about opening up and talking. It's creating that environment for people to have their chit chats and figure out how people are getting on with their lives, especially during these times.
Talking, Malachy, talking. This is what it's all about. That's what tonight's all about, and encouraging people to express yourself. Expressing yourself changed your life.
Definitely.
Tell me that.
Yeah, I mean, when I was younger, a lot of men are programmed in a certain way not to express themselves to their fullest capabilities, and like I got a touch of that. My first taste of it was my transition from teenage years into adulthood in school, leaving certificate, where a lot of people are feeling stress and angst with their examinations and that kind of identity crisis. Who am I? What am I going to do? And I was in a public school in Oatlands College, and that's an all-boys school. So I was struggling with these emotions, and I knew with the 90 other kids in that year group were feeling the same thing. But that was all going through their heads, but not a single one were able to vocalise their thoughts.
Yes.
And that was something that I carried on as a burden in later life. I then just kept that all bottled up because it's what I learned from when I was younger, and then that was represented on the street in like these male role models in which we see that have the same attitude on life, the same style, the same haircut, and that same herd mentality, and they don't let anything in. And if you step out of line, it's almost seen as a masculine.
So you join the mob and the herd and do what everyone else.
And it's only because you can,
Take us to, what was it, New Year's Eve?
New Year's Eve 2019. Yeah, that was the climax of my mental health struggle.
Okay.
I was struggling for about 2 years. I was on antidepressants and was involved with just toxic relationships. My friendships were deteriorating, and with that sort of my mental health. And I reached my breaking point on New Year's of 2019, where I had a mental breakdown, and I was found in a car park by 4 of my friends, and they called the police for me at the time.
Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
What does a mental breakdown look like?
I couldn't really remember a lot of it, Ryan, but from how they would describe it, it's something that you are so engulfed in your own thoughts, in your own mind, that any sort of advice or any sort of voice around you is almost just put to the side. Your mind plays tricks on you, and it was that night. And
your friends you were in the car park, you were saying and doing things.
I was by myself until they came and called me and found me where I was, and it was a cry for help, but I didn't know what else to do. But luckily my friends came to my side and they called the police for me, because they were worried. And at the time you go, why would you ever do that? But they were only doing that because they were looking out for me. And that's the most important thing, because a person in that mental state is a danger to themselves or others. So they were only doing the right thing.
And you had people there to do that.
Amazing. We needed someone there
and
by our
friends
side
to call it, not to run away and not confront it. That's what you have. I mean, Conor, your point, not dissimilar to Malachy's, but the point where you have to confront it all involved solitude in your case.
Yeah, it was very, very strange there hearing Hugh's story about that it was New Year's Eve 2019. It was New Year's Day of 2019 that
Really?
That really was the kind of changing point for me. It was months and months of I suppose alcohol abuse, leaning on alcohol to kind of run away from my problems, distract myself from my problems, and I really had to confront myself that day and kind of say, we have to make some changes here right now, or we might not see New Year's Day 2020.
And where did you find yourself that New Year's Day?
I suppose from that very day, the way I explain it to people is I just became my own best friend.
Yeah.
And I asked people this question when I give my talks to universities and to schools. I ask, if you were given your best friend's mind and your best friend's body to look after for a week, what would you do?
Yeah.
You'd probably, make sure they were drinking enough water, that they were eating good food, that they were getting 8 hours of sleep, and that they were thinking good thoughts about themselves.
Yes.
And that they were being compassionate and good to themselves. And then I ask, what would you do if you were given your own mind and your own body to look after for a week? And I don't think that we generally jump straight away into this, I would want the best for myself mentality. I don't think that we would, bounce straight away into this. I would be compassionate to myself. I would think good things about myself. I would, nourish myself and make sure I got enough sleep. But I made the decision there and then that I was going to be that best friend to myself.
Ray, I'm glad you're here tonight in many respects also, is because for the younger viewer, the teenage years, people often say, teenagers are all the same, whatever. They're not. They are complicated, beautiful individuals that need to be minded as much as any craft in a harbour needs to be minded before they're let out into the sea. And that's what you went through, isn't that, as a teenager, that anxiety. And talk to me about that and how you confronted your own pain.
Yeah, I suppose I didn't really have the skills to confront it initially, and that's kind of what led to it building up to a point where I kind of became my own worst enemy rather than my own best friend, as Connor put it.
How?
I suppose that inner monologue in your head, the voice that we all think with, I began to hate myself, really. I spent so long being depressed and suffering with anxiety attacks that I really started to resent the person I was, looked in the mirror, and there's countless times I was just brought to tears by just for no real reason.
What was the image in the mirror doing to inspire so much hatred?
Just the mindset. I was constant. My self-talk was constantly negative and kind of viciously negative. Like really telling myself that I was kind of no good to anyone else, and at this point I was being a burden on people, which of course is untrue. And I didn't really have the skills to acknowledge kind of like, do you know what? Like every other person here is feeling something similar. Like there's hundreds and thousands of kids around the country that would have been feeling the same way. But I suppose I didn't really have the skills to acknowledge that. And there was nights where I remember I was assigned antidepressants from my GP and having like almost abused them at night and coming up the next morning on almost like a come down from what you've done to yourself the night before.
And why did you ultimately then feel the need to call a suicide line? What brought you to that point?
Well, I was in Dublin at the time. I'd just gone into accommodation in Diggs. I just started in UCD, and at this point I'd probably been nearly 2 years suffering with depression, and all of a sudden I was faced with deadlines. I had to look after myself pretty much in college assignments, and I just wasn't ready to face into the real world. And there was a night where I went on to, it was called Blackboard at the time, which was the UCD portal, and I saw that I had 5 or 6 overdue deadlines, and the best way I can describe it is think of basically the strongest or heaviest person you know, pinning your arms to your chest and standing on them and just not getting up and being able to take that deep breath. I couldn't do it, and it was then when I realised I was having quite a significant panic attack, and I really started to freak out, and I kind of started to think that the only way to get rid of this feeling like is if I killed myself, and I suppose I having known what happened with my dad, I realised that wasn't the answer.
He had his own history.
He had his own history. He attempted suicide when I was quite young, and so having known what happened with him, I kind of realised that wasn't my answer. So I called the helpline, and they answered the phone, and I hung up almost immediately.
Why?
Fear, shame, embarrassment, not knowing what to say.
Does anything that we're hearing, Malachy, Connor, from Ray, does it chime with your story or do you understand what he's saying?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it wasn't until I had that breakdown was then I could really be the person I wanted to be. I wasn't restricted.
Yeah, there's a freedom in acknowledging the pain. Is that right, Connor? Is that
Absolutely.
how it works?
I just felt enormous guilt. I felt enormous guilt for feeling bad.
What were you guilty of?
From the outside, I felt like maybe my life was perfect. I had a loving family. I had a good job. I had friends. I had a social life. I had all of these things going on. It was like, what do you have to be, feeling down about? And that guilt is just it's toxic. It's toxic. And if you are feeling bad, it doesn't matter what's happening in your life. You could be, you could be the presenter of the Late Late Show, and it doesn't matter, because if you don't feel good in yourself, every day, and you can't look at yourself in the mirror, it doesn't matter.
And this is what's so refreshing about you guys being here tonight, because I think if we as a country had done this for generations, we'd have a much better state of affairs.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? Probably much more. I don't know. Like, think of a country that's better relations with community and family, and the great Irish father and son relationship, mother daughter, whatever it might be. Does that make sense generationally?
I think
definitely.
Sorry, you.
Go ahead.
No, I was actually going to say that you made a tremendous point in the documentary about that when we do talk to each other, that we need to do it without a pint in hand, without a drink in hand. And I really, it really made me think about the larger scale of things and this Irish drinking culture. That's not my culture. My culture is filled with poets and filled with warriors and filled with bards. You know what I mean?
People who still like to drink.
Storytellers.
No, but I know what you mean.
But it's filled with storytellers, and it's filled with, and we need to be able to tell our stories.
We can do it all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we need to be warriors too, because it is our fight. Our mental health is our own fight to take on, and it is up to us to put our hands up sometimes and go, here, I need a bit of help, I'm struggling.
Ray, when you think about it as a sportsman, and that can be quite masculine, not toxic. Not everything it has to. You don't have to say toxic before masculine at all the time, but certainly it can be like that. Do you think that the lads, so-called, are of your generation and your team would be much more open to saying, "You all right? Everything okay?" Or is it there's still remnants of the past in terms of that opening up?
I think youngsters are getting better, but I still think that I know if I walk into the Westmeath or Athlone GA dressing rooms, I know for a fact that 90% of the men in there at one point or another, for whatever the reasons, would have been down in the depths of despair. For
90%.
I would say so easily. There's a youngster out there who is the very same as I was. He plays football, he plays hurling or rugby. He's in a position now where he's hiding it from his family, that at night he's crying in his room. He might be sitting down watching TV. It might be his parents who are even feeling that way. If you've been waiting for something to trigger you to speak to someone, this is it. Like hearing us speaking now, hearing me say this is your trigger to pause the television now and just turn to whoever's beside you. Turn and ask, are you okay? Because I feel if someone had said to me, when I was 17, like I was acting out in football and I was being an unpleasant young lad, and if someone had turned and said to me, like, are you okay? This isn't you. This isn't the Ray that we knew. This isn't the fun, energetic kid that we knew a few years ago. I think I would have just broken down and the floodgates would have opened, and I would have saved myself and my family an awful lot of hardship. This is your sign to say to someone, I'm not feeling okay, I need help, or it's your sign to ask.
That's brilliantly put, and that's what tonight is about, and that's why we put the numbers up for Pieta, for people to donate. Because, as you rightly say, Ray, that's what people need to do is don't say, someday I might make that call because I feel so bad. Make it now. That's what the numbers are there for. Listen to what you've all said as, men representing your generation, but also just representing Irish people.
Yeah.
We need to talk more, be listened to more, and fix it.
Yeah.
If possible.
Like we're all here now sharing our stories that they've all a positive ending. Like when you watch the documentary, it's quite it gets to some dark places, but it finishes on a very upbeat note. But you don't hear the happy ever after story from the person who's committed suicide. They don't give you that chance, and they feel it's their only way out. but it's not. Like, we've all been in that position where we felt that there's only one way out.
Are you all happier men today than you've ever been before? Would that be fair to say? You're keeping an eye on yourselves emotionally, mentally, Malachy?
I think the biggest thing is knowing how to deal with it now. That we're not perfect, and when we do have our bad days, at least I know how to deal with it.
Great.
Before, I didn't have a clue.
Great.
But with the support groups and the facilities that I went through, and my friends, my family, I'm now able to understand why I'm feeling like that and do everything I can.
You can lift the bonnet and fix it.
Exactly.
That's essentially
exactly. That's really important.
Same thing.
Absolutely, it's our personal responsibility.
Yes.
You know, to look after our own mental health.
Sure
and Ray made a great point there. Like, there is in some way no one going to fly through the window and scoop you up out of this negative mindset. You know, there's no one going to do that. So it is up to you, if there is somebody that's watching right now, to put your hand up and say, hey, I'm struggling, you know, throw me a lifeline here. And that's the first step. And they'll get you to your feet and be you again, you know.
Lads, I can't thank you enough for being with us tonight. Continued success on the pitch, on the running tracks, wherever you might be, on the stage when the gigs start, because you're going to conquer the UK and then you're going to head over the ocean and conquer America, which is all good news. To your families, wish you every happiness and success, and we'll talk again, I hope, soon. Thank you very much for being here tonight. All right, Malachy, Ray and Conor, they're going to be part of a brand new RTE Players series called I'm Fine. It's available to watch on the Player from Monday, May the 10th. I had a look at some of the previews of it. Excellent program, well worth watching. Let's give another push at